Anyone remember that time when Ben Shapiro destroyed Piers Morgan on gun control in front of the entire United States? This was in early 2013, after one of the most horrifying mass shootings America had ever experienced. And as is often the case, many were calling for banning specific guns, limiting magazine capacity, and there were even some calls for registration or outright confiscation. Piers Morgan was a person who was particularly vocal on banning so-called assault weapons and was essentially shaming people who didn't agree with him on this kind of policy. But he wasn't ready for this confrontation with rising conservative Ben Shapiro. This was likely one of the most pivotal moments in Shapiro's career, and probably largely responsible for making him a household name in conservatism. I think it's more important than ever to talk about the U.S. Constitution and to understand issues like gun rights, which are often tossed aside and disregarded by many Americans. This holds true, and to an even larger degree, for people around the world. Just look at recent government overreach we've seen in Canada and New Zealand. Countries deciding on a whim to continue dismantling some of their citizens' most fundamental rights. Not that we should expect a whole lot more, considering they can't even get freedom of speech right. Anyway, I'll quit rambling. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you think conversations like this are important like I do, please consider sharing this video on social media. If you want to see more videos like this, please be sure to smash that like button and also consider subscribing. Enjoy.
Strong words from Vice President Biden, who heads the White House Task Force on Guns. My next guest has strong words for me. He says, I'm off the rails on guns in America. Ben Shapiro is editor-at-large at Breitbart.com and the author of Bullies, How the Left's Culture of Fear and Intimidation Silences Americans. So why am I off the rails, Mr. Shapiro?
Honestly, Piers, you've kind of been a bully on this issue because what you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show, I watch your show, and I've seen it repeatedly, what you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy. I think we can have a rational political conversation about balancing rights and risks and rewards of all of these different policies. But I don't think that what we need to do is demonize people on the other side as being unfeeling about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves of the children that died there? How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
Like I say, how dare you?
Well, I mean, you can keep saying that, but you've done it repeatedly. What you do, and I've seen you do it on the program, is you keep saying to folks that if they disagree with you politically, then somehow this is a violation of what happened in Sandy Hook. And you have yet, I'd really like to hear your policy prescriptions for what we should do about guns. Because you say that you respect the Second Amendment, and, you know, I brought this here for you so that you can read it. It's the Constitution. And I would really like for you to explain to me what you would do about guns that would have prevented what happened in Sandy Hook. If you want to do what you did in the UK, right, which is ban virtually all guns, that is at least a fair argument. And we can have a discussion about whether that's something that we ought to do or not.
I've made it very clear what I want to do, which is exactly what Mark Kelly wants to do. And in fact, rather than address
let's talk about that.
Rather than address your comments to me about standing on the graves of children at Sandy Hook, you can address them to Mark Kelly, because he agrees with everything that I've been saying, because he feels the same way, as does his wife. They're gun owners. They both respect the Second Amendment of the Constitution. They don't want to take away anybody's right to defend themselves with guns.
They want to take away certain types of guns, obviously.
They want to take away assault weapons, which are capable, with magazines like we saw at Aurora and Sandy Hook, of unleashing a ridiculous amount of bullets.
Well, this is a question I wanted to ask you, Piers, because I've seen you talk about assault weapons a lot, and I've seen Mark Kelly talk about assault weapons. The vast majority of murders in this country that are committed with guns are not committed with assault weapons. They're committed with handguns. Okay, so are you willing to ban handguns in this country across the country?
No, that's not what I'm asking for.
Why not?
Let me ask you.
Don't you care about the kids who are being killed in Chicago as much as the kids in Sandy Hook?
Yes, I do.
Then why don't you care about banning the handguns in Chicago?
We'll come to that. Let me ask you this. What was the weapon used at Aurora in the movie theatre?
It was an assault rifle, sure.
Okay. What was the weapon used in the Oregon shopping mall?
I believe it was an assault rifle, correct?
Okay. What was the weapon used at Sandy Hook?
It was an assault rifle.
What was the weapon used at the incident around Christmas when the firemen were lured to their deaths, the New York State firemen?
And bought illegally? That was an assault rifle.
Right, so the last 4 mass shootings in America were all the assault rifles.
And the vast
that is the reason, Mr. Shapiro. And you can smirk at me, and you can laugh at me.
I'm not smirking.
And you can accuse me of standing on the graves of dead children.
And being a bully, yes.
But that is the reason that people like me and Mark Kelly and Gabrielle Giffords want to have assault weapons like that removed from civilian hands.
Your passion on the issue doesn't really justify the rationale for why you want to ban assault weapons, but not handguns.
You don't understand why we want to remove the preferred weapon of choice these killing machines
well, I would like
from
you
the
to
hands of deranged young men?
All I'm asking is for you to be philosophically consistent. If what you're worried about is the removal of killing machines from the hands of deranged young people, then maybe we should talk about a blanket gun ban. And let's get to what the left really wants here. And you say that you're for the Second Amendment.
Why is it about left or right? Because in Britain this never is about left or right, this issue. Why is it here?
Well, we can talk about Britain in a second. I think the reason that it's about left and right here is because fundamentally the right believes that the basis for the Second Amendment, and they believe in the Second Amendment, the basis for the Second Amendment is not really about self-defense and it's not about hunting. It is about resistance to government tyranny. That's what the founders said, and that's what the right believes in this country.
Which tyranny are you fearing yourself?
I fear the possibility of a tyranny rising in this country in the next 50 to 100 years. Let me tell you something, Piers. The fact that my grandparents and great-grandparents in Europe didn't fear that is why they are now ashes in Europe. So this kind of leftist revisionist history, where there's never any fear of democracy going usurpacious or tyrannical, is just that. It is fictitious.
Just to clarify your position then, the answer to Sandy Hook, as it was to Aurora, as it was to Gabrielle Giffords, as it was to Columbine and Virginia Tech, is you do nothing. Is that your position?
That's not my position.
What is your position?
My position is that we have to calibrate laws that are designed to get guns out of the hands of bad people and keep guns in the hands of good people who want to buy them. This idea of more guns versus less guns.
How do you do that?
Well, I think one of the ways that you do that is by better screening for mental illness. I think that you do better background checks.
Was Adam Lanza's mother a good person?
I don't know whether she was a good person or a bad person. I know she was irresponsible with her guns.
Has there been any evidence to suggest she was not a good person?
No, but there's been significant evidence
to suggest. So by your criteria,
no,
she would have been...
So here's the law.
Wait a minute. By your criteria of the good people should be allowed the guns and the bad people shouldn't, she would have been allowed the guns.
She was an irresponsible person. She didn't keep her guns locked up. And that should be against the law. If you have a mentally ill person in your house... Right. So then we're talking about laws that we can both agree on, Piers. I don't know why you're disagreeing with me on this.
Then she becomes a bad person, does she?
Well, no, it's not a matter of morally good versus morally bad.
You set the criteria, good and bad. So is she good or bad?
You're right, Piers. I should have said responsible versus irresponsible. That's correct.
Okay, so she goes from good to bad.
No, she goes from responsible to irresponsible.
Let's take a break. Let's come back and talk more about this because we don't agree.
All right, so I thought there was some pretty good stuff, but keep in mind there's a lot that you didn't get to see in the original Piers Morgan segment. For example, Piers was going to use some pretty nasty tactics on Ben during a commercial break or whatever the case may be. And Ben talked about that in 2016 when he appeared on Dave Rubin. In fact, all this is linked in the description below if you'd like to watch these things yourself. But anyway, here's a clip from that interview with Dave Rubin.
Let's just knock out a couple other things. So I saw when you were on Piers Morgan with that whole gun thing way back when, and I watched it again in preparation for this. And I never liked Piers Morgan. I thought he was doing a talk show the wrong way. I hope people don't view me in that way. But what you did with him in the argument was really kind of brilliant. And it goes to some of the 11.
Well,
and before I even let you say anything, I don't really agree with your stance on guns. So can you sort of recap what happened, and then we'll...
Sure. Well, first of all, like Trump, now that you've complimented me, like Putin, now you're a good person. Now you're a good person.
See what I did there? I told you I read the rules.
It's all good. So what happened in that debate is that Piers Morgan had basically been doing a lot of the things we're talking about. For weeks, he'd been saying after Sandy Hook that anybody who disagreed with him on gun control, the only possible reason to disagree with him is because you don't care about what happened on gun control. And you saw Barack Obama do this, after the last mass shooting, right? After Umpqua Community College, and he got up there and he did the teary-eyed routine, and I don't like tears. Stop. Like just give me your policy. Yeah. So what I said.
You think he faked the tears? People were saying he touched his eye in a weird way.
I don't think
he was tearing out over here.
I think Obama is an unusually skilled politician, and I think he worked himself up to tears. I think that good actors can. I think that, the idea that the emotion is fake is, I don't think the emotion's fake, but the emotion of actors isn't fake either. If you talk to actors who work themselves up to tears, they actually feel sad when they are crying. That's how you get yourself to cry, right? I think Obama worked himself up there. Otherwise, he'd be crying.
He's a method actor.
Well, otherwise he'd be crying every other press conference. I mean, he's talking about all sorts of crap that goes on in the country that's terrible. Every time he gets out there and he talks about the economy, he'd be crying. I mean, he'd be completely emotionally unstable. It's one of the two. So what I said to Piers Morgan is I said, you're a bully, and the way that you bully people is you stand on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook to push your political agenda. And he didn't know how to come back from that because that was his entire strategy, and now it had been unmasked. And actually, during the break, he had planned to bring in a kid who'd been shot and was in a wheelchair and say, well, you've said it to me, now say it to this small pool child. And he couldn't do it because if he had done that, I immediately would have said, first you stood on the graves of the kids, and now you're standing on this poor guy's wheelchair. It's terrible. But it's so that was sort of the content of the argument. He tried to throw the Ronald Reagan was in favor of banning assault weapons at me. I don't care, as I've said, what Ronald Reagan had to say. He's a guy. Sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong.
Yeah. So he wasn't a god? Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
You're confirming that.
As a religious person, I only have one in Reagan.
Not him.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so Ben and Dave go on to discuss some policy issues. Dave would like to see guns controlled better, but he does concede that we have a pretty big mental health problem, and Ben gives some insightful stats on that. But those topics are just so complicated that they really need videos in and of themselves, and one couldn't even cover it. I mean, can't even imagine how many videos you can do on those topics. All right, guys, so I think I'm going to quit rambling and cut it off here. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider sharing on social media and smashing that like button and maybe even subscribing for more videos like this. Thanks again, guys. See ya.